All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is webinar number 11 in our series, From Stars to Superstars, the growing role of degree apprenticeships. Today's session is going to take a look at one of the more exciting areas of the new apprenticeships regime, and that is degree apprenticeships and higher apprenticeships that feed into them. So by 2020, the government wants there to be 500,000 apprentices in England, and that would mean that there would be approximately as many apprenticeship starts each year as there currently are applications to UCAS to go to university. So if the government's vision is achieved, you might be able to say that apprenticeships have been put roughly on the same par with degree level education. And with graduate debt rising and the post-university reality that many of us on this call would have experienced, that of searching seemingly in vain for a career with no end in sight, has been brought into sharp focus on the demand side of the equation. And on the supply side, employers are increasingly looking to degree apprenticeships as a simultaneous solution for a number of issues. So how to generate opportunities for staff progression, how to upskill into and fill externally technically demanding roles, how to develop future leadership talent and capacity within the organisation, and as an alternative to graduate recruitment. So to discuss these issues today from the perspective of the organisation, I welcome my guest, Anne Ashworth, who is Head of Internal Apprenticeships here at Pearson. I am Neil Lingo. I am Head of Marketing for Apprenticeships, and my role today is as the event host. So before we get into that, a little bit of background for those of you who are new around here, perhaps wondering why Pearson feel that they have something to add to this debate. Put simply, our day job is as the UK's largest awarding organisation and as a leading educational publisher worldwide, and we're the owner of well-known brands such as BTEC, EdExcel. We're the makers of BTEC Higher Nationals qualifications, and we're a leader in apprenticeship services, but we're also your peer. We're a levy-paying organisation, rather a substantial levy-paying organisation, and that's because we have approximately 4,000 staff in the UK. So this means that we've had to take the arrival of the apprenticeship levy particularly seriously, both in our response from a service point of view, but also internally by embracing the opportunities provided by the apprenticeship levy from a learning and development and a talent management perspective. So we started in May 2017 with 30 apprentices, and we have progressed to the point whereby this year, May 2018, we hope to have 100 apprentices on programme, and those programmes are between levels 2 and 6 and across 13 different standards or frameworks. So it's a fairly comprehensive programme touching on a number of functions within our organisation. So following on from last session, where we explored how one should design an apprenticeship programme that meets your organisation's needs, today we're going to look just at degree apprenticeships, and we're going to look at it from 3 different angles. And I have a live guest, Anne Ashworth, who I introduced earlier, and then I have some recorded guests, and those recorded guests are both the managers of degree apprenticeships, of degree apprentices, and the degree apprentices themselves. So I'll deal with them one at a time, but first I would like to introduce from the organisational perspective. Hello and welcome to my guest, Anne Ashworth. Anne, hopefully you are still there.
I am indeed. Thank you very much, Neil. Yes, I'm here. Okay,
so Anne, from the organisation's perspective, first of all, what are the most important factors that should be taken into account when considering whether or not to include degree apprenticeships as part of your overall strategy?
Well, I suppose the key one is just how much levy money you've got to play with, because degree apprenticeships are £27,000. So you really do need to plan ahead with that and work out how much you not just have to spend on new starts, but how much you're paying out every month. So that needs a fair bit of forecasting if you're pretty low on your levy amount of money. I think, you know, when you've moved away from that practicality, it's also then about the mix. you want to use your apprenticeship levy to fulfill business need, and you need to consider where degree apprentices fit into that. Are they about internal members of staff and about recognising and developing talent further? Are they about bringing in different people into different roles? Is it about creating new roles in the business as well? So there's a variety of things that you need to consider when you're developing your apprenticeship strategy overall, but including degree apprenticeships. And don't forget, this year we also have the launch of master's degree apprenticeships as well. So they are again aimed at a very specific type of group of people, I would say, and they need to be planned for as well.
Okay, so moving us on, most of us, and I include myself in this, think instinctively of a degree apprentice as somebody who is in the 18 to 24 age range, so somebody who is taking a degree apprenticeship as an alternative to graduate recruitment. But I've been slightly disabused of that notion in the preparation of this webinar. So what is your take on a degree apprentice?
Well, we have 20 members of staff on degree apprenticeships at the moment, and around half of them were new recruits into new roles, and around 2/3, I would say, are more mature and have been in the business a little while, and the rest are probably 18 to 24 range. And it's a real mixed bag, and I have to say that's really pleasing to note that we are attracting people into this level of study from all different backgrounds, different ages, different experiences. And I think that really does open out fantastic possibilities. It also presents higher education institutions, the deliverers, with a number of questions that they need to answer. Because if you've got people that are coming, that are interested and more than able to do the degree apprenticeship, but they don't have the academic qualifications, then you need to work out how you know that they are able to undertake a form of study that is very, very demanding. And we certainly have worked with one of our partners to develop a preparatory training program, for example, which is a 3-day masterclass, which gives the candidates an opportunity to test out the offer, gives us an opportunity to assess their abilities. So it's not just something that's based on qualifications, fresh out of sixth form, though we do have candidates that have come forward for that. So no, I think it's fantastic that we are having that lovely mix. And certainly for internal people, it gives them that wonderful progression opportunity that perhaps they've been seeking for a while, but haven't had the opportunity to take up.
Okay, so just on that, role selection is clearly key. Not every role is going to be suitable for an apprentice of degree level and degree standards. So what's the thought process that you would advise people follow when trying to map their roles to degree apprenticeship standards? I think you've given two different categories on here. Would you say that this neatly aligns with entry level degree and mature degree, or is it not quite as straightforward as that?
I think what it does do, it gets you thinking about whether there is an apprenticeship standard that's more appropriate than the degree apprenticeship. For example, if you've got somebody that's working in marketing, then you might be best placed putting that somebody on the digital marketeer program rather than the generic management program. But one of the things you really have to think about here is, where is this person going in the business? And that, I think, is a good starting point about in terms of your investment in them, the way that you see their career progressing. The degree apprenticeship is not like the other apprenticeships. It's not specifically job role related. It's not, cybersecurity. It's not digital marketing. It's not project management. It's more generic. Some of the more specialist degree apprenticeships, fine, things like legal, but even in sales, it's quite generic. So you do need to be thinking about where that person's going, how you want to utilize that job role as you go forward, and the investment that you're making in that individual as well. So all of that together, along with some really good support from your HRBPs, who are talking about, the talent management, the performance review elements, the workforce development, will all help make a sound decision.
Okay, so taking all that in summary, it sounds to me as though this is not a simple, straightforward swap for an existing graduate recruitment process. A degree apprenticeship needs to be approached from a substantially different standpoint, and really with a 3-year program, you need to be thinking probably quite intensely about the retention potential of that particular candidate, do you not?
Absolutely, you do. And I think one of the things that you could get very tied up in actually is the degree element of it, because the degree is only part of the overall whole. It's the whole apprenticeship you need to think about. You need to think about the support mechanisms around that individual. You need to be working with the HEI institution on the delivery model to ensure that it's got enough flexibility in it to meet the needs of the employer and the individual. You need to also do quite a lot of work around the line management involvement, because there's a number of work-based projects in all of these apprenticeships that are truly beneficial to the business, and that can only work well when the line manager is involved in that and can direct the provider in what that might look like. And that's when you start to see the business benefit coming through.
Okay, so to summarise from the organisational perspective, key challenges for new entrants. So a rather logistical, straightforward point, you have to align your induction with when the academic start is likely to happen. Your training partner, however, perhaps an advantage, your training partner is going to be a university with degree awarding powers. Their recruitment expertise. This is some. Would you like to say a few more words on this, Anne, around the recruitment potential of working with a university?
Yeah, I mean, this is an area of study that employers, unless they've been doing a graduate program, are pretty unfamiliar with, and we've not seen it in the apprenticeship field before. So actually tapping into the expertise of your deliverer here is really quite key. They can help you to understand what the university entry requirements are. You can also help them to develop their understanding of actually, when you've got mature people coming on program, how can they adjust their entry criteria away from specifically focused on 18-year-olds. I think that preparation piece is really key. You know, people can't just jump straight into this. They need to understand the commitment that's required of them, the level of study, the language of academic study. So there needs to be some element of preparation that goes into place, which might form part of assessment, but it could be an addition too. So using expertise of your partner and aligning your recruitment with what they can offer, I think is highly beneficial and cost effective, let's face it, because they can certainly help you with the recruitment side as well.
Okay, so for the line managers though, I think in preparing the content for this event, it became very, very clear that the burden of managing a degree apprentice was going to be far greater than for any other level of apprentice. And that probably neatly moves us on to the second section of our session today. So I'm just going to pop Anne on mute for a moment, because just to avoid any issues with sound. So from the manager's perspective, when selecting a role for apprenticeships, for a degree apprentice, it's really important to engage with the people who are going to be managing the apprentices, because it's they who are going to bear the burden, but it's also they who are going to reap the benefits in the case of success. So we have interviewed two of our colleagues here at Pearson who are in this situation right now. Sally Peacock, who is our head of centre management. She leads a team responsible for centre approval and regulatory compliance. And secondly, Catherine Newman, who is director of sales for the BTEC and Apprenticeships division. She leads a team of more than 30 field sales people. So among their direct reports are two individuals called Letitia and Tony, who are their degree apprentices, and we started by asking Sally how she supports Letitia during her program. Okay, so we're back there, and I'm just going to open up Anne's mic again. So hopefully the audio of that was clear to everyone, but as I say, we will post a video of this on our website afterwards, and we will include the full section of those recordings with Catherine. So Anne, the first thing that strikes me listening to that is the importance of apprenticeships, and particularly degree apprenticeships, as a progression tool.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of work with line managers through our HR business partners to discuss whether a degree apprenticeship is appropriate for an individual for a job role. And a lot of that does come down to the talent review process and the workforce planning, if you like. And in certain cases, it's seen as a retention tool. It's seen as a way to reward good performance, an opportunity to actually progress individuals through the business. And it's certainly, in terms of, say, the management degree apprenticeship, gives us an opportunity to broaden out the skill set of individuals so that they can move into higher management positions within the business, and maybe they will actually be overseeing a specialist role. So I would say progression, absolutely critical. Even when you're recruiting new apprenticeships into degree apprenticeship roles, you need to be very much aware of where this apprentice is going to be positioned in the business after their degree apprenticeship finishes. So, you know, where do you see them going in the future?
Okay, but clearly, even with experienced staff, the transition is something that needs to be planned for, because it's not simply a matter of clicking one's fingers. One moment you have an experienced employee doing the job that they've been doing for several years perhaps, and the next, that same experienced employee has a very intensive program of study alongside their day job. So what would you advise taking into account prior to embarking on that?
Well, obviously the first thing is there significant new learning to be gained by doing the apprenticeship? And is that individual committed to a long term of learning? Because, you know, in some cases they could just do, for example, if they're doing the higher apprenticeship, they could just be doing the CMI level 5 diploma, which would, you know, be a shorter program of learning. So those are two key things. Then what you need to take into consideration is their prior experience. I mean, we do have people that will require functional skills, English and maths, even whilst doing the degree apprenticeship. So it's planning that and making sure that it's seen as motivational to the individual and not a deterrent or a barrier. Then, of course, there's marrying the demands of the degree content, the academic access to learning, the 20% off the job. That's obviously a huge part of the apprenticeship programme. But on top of that, because it is a degree apprenticeship, you've got a significant amount of personal study that needs to be undertaken. And I found that if you're open and honest about all of this in the initial conversations with the line manager and the member of staff or the hiring manager, then you can sort out the issues behind that so much more easily than you can later on. I mean, we have members of staff, for example, that are on contracts that are not 30 hours a week. So that means we elongate the programme out. We have to be aware that they might be attending sessions in their own time. So managers then negotiate taking time off, or the apprentices taking time off in lieu to cater for that. And again, that's all part of the negotiation that must be done at the very beginning. It's looking at that delivery model that the provider is offering and looking to see the flexibilities that they're prepared to give that meets the needs of the individual member of staff, but also the business unit and us as an employer as a whole.
Okay, so speaking of planning ahead and time off, it feels as though the first thing I would need to do if I'm managing a degree apprentice is to take a look at the length of their program, take a look at where their periods of assessment are going to fall, the periods where they're going to need to be preparing for assessment, writing the assessments, delivering it, sitting exams, and then compare that to my team's known peaks of activity, because I imagine that the first thing you're going to discover is that there are going to be some periods of time where it's just not ideal, and you're going to have to figure out a workaround for this. You're
becoming a bit of an expert on this now, Neil, you know, but that's absolutely right. You know, the first thing you have to do is look at the delivery model that the provider is offering and marry that to the line manager, the team, because don't forget, even though this is an individual apprentice, they're working within a team. And you need to be very aware of the commitments of that team. And there will be business peaks that have to be considered as well, but also simple things like travel. You know, if somebody is going to be traveling long distances to get to a point of study, then that has an impact on their work-life balance, has an impact on their work role. So, you know, you want to have a delivery model that gives, I would say, fairly local delivery if possible, but certainly flexible delivery. And more than likely, you need some sort of technology in that delivery model to give you that flexibility as well. But all of this is a conversation. It has to be negotiated. It can't just be, this is the way we do it, that's it. You have to work around it. I mean, what I certainly don't want is lots of apprentices not able to attend sessions. I want 100% attendance because the sessions have been planned with that individual and we know absolutely they are able to go.
But picking up on that point, though, if a conflict arises between the needs of the business and the needs of the apprenticeship program, which ultimately needs to win?
Well, I would say the workplace, the business is always the priority. They're an employee. You know, you've got business needs, you've got KPIs. The apprenticeship can move around that. There's a huge number of flexibilities you can put in place. You just need to have a provider who understands that and who's prepared to work with you. And, you know, we've got 3 delivery providers for our degree apprentices at the moment, all offering something very different, actually. But nonetheless, even so, each of them have flexibilities within what they're offering to fit in with our individual apprentices and the business units that they work with. But business comes first. It has to.
Okay. All right. So let's move on then, because we've spoken a lot about how this works from the organization's point of view and from the manager's point of view, which again is an extension of the organization's point of view. But what's it actually like from the point of view of the apprentice themselves? So I'm going to play you shortly interviews with 2 ladies who work at Pearson and are currently degree apprentices. They're both long-standing employees and they report respectively to Sally and Catherine, who you just heard from. So they are Letitia Rowan, who is International Quality Assurance and Operations Manager, and Tony Pitts, who's our FE Centre Support Team Leader. So the 2 individuals with very different roles. One is field-based and one is telephone-based account management, and the other is audit and compliance, but with substantial travel, indeed international travel. So they share similar ambitions, but as people, they may not be how you pictured a degree apprentice. Okay, ladies and gents, I'm going to stop that one there because that was really, really poor even at my end. So I'm going to work on the assumption that was not particularly good at your end. I'm going to go to the backup solution now. So give me a moment while I get... Okay, so apologies for the hiatus there, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that was a little bit back and forth, but we got there eventually. So I'm going to bring Anne back into the picture. So Anne, just picking up on some of the issues that were discussed there. And incidentally, just before we go into this discussion, I should point out to everyone that we're approaching the end of our content today, as our slide there suggests. So if you do have any questions, now would be a good time to feed them in while Anne and I kick around the issues from that last set of videos. So Anne, a couple of things that I picked up on there. Mentoring, that seemed to get, that was a concept that was really explored there, because not only do the apprentices themselves have mentors, but in many cases they are also mentors themselves and mentoring their own staff. And I know from personal experience that Tony actually has direct line reports of a couple of people, and I think Letitia does also. So it feels to me as though this is really an opportunity to develop something of a culture within your organisation as regards mentoring.
Yeah, you've hit on it. I mean, it was something that I felt was really vital in our apprenticeship program for all levels of apprentices, actually. Every single apprentice has a nominated mentor. It's an opportunity for a line manager to put somebody forward who might benefit from being a mentor, who maybe has done it before. But in terms of the degree apprentices, we wanted something a little bit more than that. And even though mentoring is a big part of how we support our managers within the business, one of the things that we hadn't done was actually really bring into programs of development our senior people. So we have, for our degree apprentices and our higher apprenticeships, also brought in senior members of staff as mentors stroke sponsors, so director level upwards. And that is really hugely beneficial. It's opening up the business in the UK to our apprentices. It's giving them visibility. It's helping them to understand how a corporate organisation works outside of their own division, and certainly helping them with the theory and putting that into practice. So it's working well. It might sound like it's overkill, but we're finding that actually the mentoring is quite informal. We leave it to the mentor and the individual to decide how they want that to work. And it's working exceptionally well alongside the support that the line manager gives.
Okay, and we also, we touched on this when we were talking about the managers and hearing from the managers. There's an adaptation period or an adaptation that needs to be made by the apprentices, because they are in effect moving from a full-time role, what they've been doing for however many years. Now suddenly they're in a part-time role where they're a trainee and they're trying to reach the next level, but they're not working 5 days per week or full-time equivalent on their role. They're working maximum 0.8 FTE, and the other 20% is off the job learning. So time management, how do you prepare the apprentices themselves to adapt to that change in their lifestyle?
It depends on the level of the apprenticeship, actually. I find that the degree apprentices are pretty good at managing their time. I mean, we've got one that's working a very flexible model with the degree apprenticeship and has negotiated Mondays as a time that they will work on it, because they're using an online platform, so a lot of remote support. But that, again, is where we sit down with the line managers. It's part of the awareness training piece that we do for line managers and potential candidates for degree apprenticeships, and talk through this change, because it is a significant change. You're absolutely right. All of a sudden, you've got the equivalent of 1 day a week where you are studying or doing something for your apprenticeship program. Then you've got the personal study time on top of that. And what we also do is we give 2 hours a week study time on top, which helps where some have got functional skills to do, because functional skills are not covered in the 20% off the job under the levy. But it does, it is, I always talk about it, that you are now in a training role, regardless of how many years experience you have, because you've been identified as somebody who would benefit from this program. So i.e. there's a lot of new learning for you. And by calling it a training role, it's not just the manager who thinks that way, it's the team as well. And the manager is absolutely responsible for managing that workload of the individual whilst they're on the apprenticeship. However they do that is entirely up to them, but that's part of their development as well, is taking that responsibility to ensure that the individual is given the time that they have been allotted, and that other members of the team are able to do what they need to do. And what we don't want is overstressed apprentices trying to keep with the same workflow that they've had before, plus the study of an apprenticeship.
Okay, thanks very much, Anne. And I hope that you have found today's event useful. Anne and I are still here for a few more minutes if you have any questions. But I leave you with a couple of links for further resources where you can find recordings of all of these events, should you have missed one in the series, or should you, for example, want to delve a little bit further into the design of the apprenticeship program, which Anne and I alluded to in our content earlier. There is an event on that. We've looked at managing your levy payment account through HMRC's portal as well. There are in total about 9 or 10 events that you can access right now. But if there are no questions, then I give you your leave and thank you for your attendance today. Anne and I will hang on the line for a few more minutes just in case you want to have a quiet chat off mic. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy your evening.